Historic rulings from the Supreme Court strengthens same-sex marriage in the U.S. Good evening. This is CTV News. I'm Sonia Shrivastava. Thank you for joining us this evening. Well, same-sex couples who are married will now be able to get the same federal benefits as their heterosexual counterparts. In two historic moves, the Supreme Court rules DOMA unconstitutional and in a separate case clears the way for same-sex unions in California. Today, thousands gathered in anticipation and celebration. Denise Douglas has the details from outside the courthouse.
The Supreme Court has handed a major victory to the gay community and its advocates today. You can see thousands are out here at the steps of the High Court with signs, flags, T-shirts, buttons, and much more, celebrating. For years, Tom Fulton worried about getting Social Security and other benefits if something happened to his husband. But now he doesn't have to.
I'll get that Social Security. And 1,000 other rights that married couples have now will be given to us, as should be the case.
The Supreme Court struck down part of the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, which will allow same-sex married couples to have access to tax, health, and pension benefits like heterosexual couples.
I'm thrilled. It's a huge statement of equality that's being sent by the highest court in the land, by one of the three branches of the United States, which is controlled by conservatives. It's a statement to all the people who don't support our equality that the game's over.
I think this is the best wedding gift we could ever receive.
Ash Hickman Freeman and her wife just got married in D.C. a few days ago since their home state of South Carolina doesn't recognize their union.
It's good to be here today on the week of our wedding, on a historic day, and it's just such good news.
Along with thousands of others, they are also celebrating a second ruling from the justices today that clears the way for lesbians and gays to marry in California.
So I'm very excited for all my friends in San Francisco who I know are having a good time right now with the news.
Despite the excitement over the historic ruling, some same-sex marriage advocates say they fall short. With 35 states still banning such unions, they vow to fight until all laws limiting same-sex marriage are eliminated. The High Court rulings come as we are seeing a lot of change regarding gay marriage. The number of states permitting same-sex partners to wed has doubled from 6 to 12 in less than a year. You may remember that the Maryland General Assembly approved it in 2012. I'm Denise Douglas, CTV News.
The Supreme Court's ruling on same-sex marriage in California will not have an impact on the other 35 states where it is illegal. Meanwhile, yesterday, the Supreme Court struck down a key part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The act requires 9 states with a history of discrimination, mostly in the South, to get federal approval before changing their voting laws and redistricting maps. The decision is drawing sharp criticism from civil rights groups who feel minorities continue to face barriers.
Is that even up till now, even during the last election, they were still trying to find ways to get around it to restrict, minorities and Latino minorities off from going to vote. That's why they had even changed the voting hours, shorten the voting hours, and things like that. The thing about it is that was always over their head, so they had to come up with different ways of doing it, But
I don't think that they should need a high court to do that, but it does seem like it's a little racial tension, especially down in the South and southern states like that. Not fair at all.
So you think that they should be able to get federal permission in order to change the laws?
I think that they should, yeah. If it has to come from the higher courts, and it should definitely come from them. And if that's the only way that it's going to make change, then that should how it be. That should how it should be.
Critics use President Obama's election as an example to show that the law, is no longer needed. Obama released a statement saying he was deeply disappointed by the ruling. Well, it has been a significant week for Supreme Court rulings as issues regarding affirmative action, voting rights, and same-sex marriage have been decided before the court. Joining us now to talk about some of those issues and its impact on residents is Alex MacNeil of Equality Maryland. And Mr. MacNeil, certainly a pleasure to have you here. Tell me, big changes are on the way for affirmative action, and what is your position on the court's ruling this week?
Sure. While we celebrated today, we're pretty sad about some of the other decisions that happened earlier this week around affirmative action, Title VII, and the Voting Rights Act. We know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that folks can vote the way that they need to vote, so that there's enough provisions that our states aren't going to be trampling on those rights, so that folks can still access education at the same kind of rates that they were. So we have some pretty deep partnerships with folks and other groups in Maryland, such as NAACP in Maryland, and have worked on some of our victories together, and certainly are going to be partnering together as we move forward now that marriage equality is official in Maryland, and we're ready to be really intentional about how we partner going forward.
Sure. And Maryland legalized same-sex marriage in the last election. Now, how will today's decision on DOMA affect same-sex couples in Maryland?
Sure. It was really what we considered in November a partial victory. It was a victory at the state level in the sense that couples were now recognized by the state, but when it came to tax time or anything else, the federal government didn't recognize those unions. So now we see it as a complete victory, allowing the federal benefits and the state recognition to kind of be together.
Now, the justice's decision on voting rights are seen as a setback in terms of civil rights. Are there any plans for your organization to ensure that everyone gets the right to vote in the next election?
Absolutely. And, we think that Maryland is pretty good around voting rights, but we know that other states it's been a problem. So one of the things that we need to be pushing for is for Congress to be looking at how states can change their laws and making sure there's some oversight there, because we know that without oversight, it's likely that some of those laws will be changed without anyone realizing it, that their rights have been taken away. So having the part of the Voting Rights Act gutted was a pretty devastating loss. And I think we need to be really vigilant as we move forward with what Congress does, because the onus is back on them to sort of act, and making sure that we push together with partners across the nation and in Maryland that they make some change.
Now, I know that your organization works on a number of issues, and certainly this week I'm sure has been busy. So what are some of the other issues that your organization is looking at?
Sure. And, we just adopted a new strategic plan so that we were able to really claim the place we're going to be going moving forward. Most recently, we've been working on getting a transgender inclusive non-discrimination law across Maryland, so that everyone's treated equally no matter where they live in the state. Right now, that's not true. And in our strategic plan, specifically, we want to be working with communities of color around healthcare disparities, particularly in the HIV rates and like how that's affected in our hospital system, and working with military veterans. There's a lot of ways that LGBT folks live in our state, and we want to make sure that we're there at the intersections.
So this is our last question, and before we go, I would like to ask you, do you consider what happened today at the Supreme Court a full victory? I mean, are you guys satisfied, or what do you think will be the next step for the gay rights movement?
It was a great day for couples in Maryland. It's only the beginning for the rest of the country. It's only the beginning for work for full equality for LGBT folks in marriage, but then beyond in terms of discrimination. We still have a fully inclusive Employment Non-Discrimination Act to pass across the country, and Equality Maryland is really committed to making sure that those victories are happening also.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure to have you here, and come back and see us sometime soon.
All right, will do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Well, more than 50 elected officials from across the state endorsed Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown and his running mate, Ken Ullman, for the 2014 gubernatorial bid. Brown and Ullman formally received the endorsement of 70 municipal leaders at a press conference in Ocean City yesterday. In a statement, Laurel Mayor Craig Moe says, quote, "With a long record of effective leadership that delivers real results, the Brown-Ullman team are the right leaders to move our state ahead." The mayors of Bladensburg, Upper Marlboro, and College Park have also given their support. Well, it seems Maryland's second largest school system could have a permanent leader by the end of the week. Legislation that took effect earlier this month gives County Executive Rashawn Baker the power to appoint the new CEO of Prince George's Schools. But the announcement earlier this week that a state-appointed panel had chosen 3 unnamed finalists for the position is raising some concerns over a lack of transparency in what was once a very public process. Ernest Moore, president of the local PTA council, says regardless of how the search is conducted, the community will ultimately hold Baker accountable for the success or failure of whomever he selects.
This time is a little different. The community really want to know is a little bit more where we are, we gave you input, we know we utilized the input. Well, right now, releasing that you have 3 candidates, we're not exactly sure who they are, and the selection is going to be made by the end of the week. We may not have an opportunity to provide any additional input, or at least have an opportunity to meet the candidates. But I think right now, with the legislation being just turned on, we want to get a superintendent by the end of the school year. I think we have a very short window to make that happen.
A Baker's spokesman says the names of the candidates are not being made public because of confidentiality issues and concerns regarding their current employers.